All right, folks, breaking news. Police now have taken into custody a 26-year-old man named Luigi Mangione in connection to the killing of UnitedHealthcare CEO. Now, they are calling him a suspect. In fact, the police say, though, that he had a similar gun to the one that was used in the killing of Brian Thompson. Also, authorities say that they found writings critical of the insurance industry along with a fake ID. I want to bring in now a special guest with us today, Andy Puzder. Andy, former CEO of CK in restaurants and other businesses out there. I just want to get your thoughts on this because this has been sort of a shot across the bow of corporate America. There's a lot of different explanations and conversation, but one thing that feels different right now is that there could be a target on the back of corporate executives. Just your thoughts on this in general.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and there has been some public reaction in favor of the shooter, which is terrible to see. This was a heinous act.
Right.
There's no way it should ever be praised, or people should be laughing about it. But it's certainly not the fault of the CEO, and it would have been better if he had more protection. But I think CEOs need to get out and talk about the issues that they're facing. This CEO is getting criticized for low quality, high cost health care, and that's not his fault. It's the fault of Obamacare and regulations that go along with Obamacare. And I think if CEOs were more willing to talk, whether it's the government that they're afraid of or these large investment firms like BlackRock or State Street or Vanguard, CEOs need to get out and speak and explain to the public what the problems that they're facing and why they're seeing what they're seeing. In this case, UnitedHealthcare is not responsible for these for the
well, he would have had some.
Insurance.
I mean, it within their industry, and a lot of things are floating around. But I did see one chart that showed their rate of rejection, their rate of rejecting insurance claims was twice the industry average. So it would be interesting to see a CEO go before the public and say, "Hey, this is why 30-some-odd% of people we're rejecting them, whereas the industry average is 17, and some of our competitors are lower than that." That's a tough thing to do, but maybe some sort of articulation on how business works, because we are in an environment where people feel that business is letting them down.
Yeah, CEOs need to get out there and speak. I can't explain why his numbers are like that, but he certainly could. I mean, I'm sure he's got good reasons. He's not out there trying to produce a high-cost, low-quality product. In fact, he's trying to do the opposite. So I think if CEOs would get out and explain more what they're facing, the issues they're facing, and help the American people understand why things are the way they are, instead of being so intimidated by the government or these large financial firms.
Right.
I think that if CEOs got out and spoke, I think that it would calm things down quite a bit.
Mark Andreessen posted over the weekend a passage from the New Yorker, and it says, "I was at a show in Midtown Manhattan on Thursday night, and when the comedians on stage cracked a joke about the shooter, the entire place erupted in cheers." So we know about this sort of anti-hero thing, whether you talk about Ma Barker, Bonnie and Clyde, or whatever, but it does feel like there are periods in our society where even violence is cheered when it's against people who are seen ultimately corrupt. How does that, other than the CEOs, are there other folks who should be a part of the solution to, hey, listen, this is not the way to go, or what do you make of it because a zeitgeist sort of thing?
Well, I think we need, in a lot of areas in this country right now, we need the politics to calm down. I think politicians could go a long way towards helping explain what the issues businesses are facing are and why consumers face these problems. There are also a lot of people that speak publicly on TV stations like we're doing, or on networks like we're doing right now, need to go through these issues and explain to people what the real problems are. There's no way in the world that a murder like this, a heinous act like this, should be laughed at or cheered anywhere. And I think people do it because they really think these people are evil, and they really don't understand what's going on, particularly with healthcare. Look, what do you and I know? If you put the government into anything, the quality will go down and the price will go up. You put the private sector into anything, and what happens? Competition, quality goes up, price goes down. So when you take Obamacare and this regulatory framework and you impose it on the health insurance, on the medical sector, you're going to get higher costs and lower prices.
It certainly wasn't what people were promised back then, right? It certainly wasn't.
If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Everybody that's got pre-existing conditions is going to be covered, and this is going to make things cheaper. Well, they just had a Gallup poll that came out and said, while 62% of Americans judge their health care as fair or good in 2009, today that number is 44%. So Obamacare was a lie on everything. All of those things were untrue. It is now more expensive, and the care is worse.
Andy, I want to switch gears here because this notion of miscommunication or misinterpreting the economy, how Main Street and Wall Street and the political realms have gotten it all wrong. I think a lot of it comes back to the way we look at data and the way, to your point, media articulates this. In fact, a lot of folks are worried about how tariffs will impact our economy, how deporting illegal immigrants will impact our economy. We had a jobs report on Friday. We've got Madison here with us. She's going to walk through where we really are with this stuff, not the hype, but the actual facts. And then I want to come back with Andy and ask him the questions. Madison, lay it out for us.
You got it, Charles. So we're going to start first with that Wall Street. Large corporations, they're expressing concerns over issues in the upcoming administration, specifically focusing on tariffs. A lot of attention being paid there. And when you look at that, you see that this has been a concern that has followed Trump. So right after his election in 2015, we saw a small increase in concerns around tariffs, a peak in 2018. And then during the Biden years, corporate concerns on tariffs, they've been lower, but now they are re-emerging. Over the last few years, though, when you take a look at other issues, like you mentioned, immigration, foreign-born workers have made up the change in the labor force. These workers also almost got all the net new jobs as well. Overall, we see some good news for companies. You look at those companies, they're no longer screaming about labor shortages. That has been a sharp decline there. Management teams discussing labor costs as well. We're also seeing a decline. And getting back to that jobs report, there was little change in the number of people who were not actively looking for a job. So that's talking about discouraged workers or long-term unemployed workers. In contrast, the measure that includes both workers with part-time jobs for economic reasons and discouraged workers, that slightly increased to 7.8%. The labor force participation rate, which indicates the percentage of working age individuals who are employed or actively seeking work, that fell slightly to 62.5%. On Friday, we learned 193,000 Americans left the labor forces in November. And now that major spike in year-to-year growth in employment population ratio, that's prime-age workers 25 to 54, it's turning negative, and the ratio may have peaked. Now, when that in mind, when critics say that America should look the other way in terms of illegal immigration because we need workers, there could be a better solution. Get the millions of folks, particularly prime-aged men, back into the labor force. Charles?
Madison, thanks a lot. Andy, you're back with us. Want to let the audience know you've just written a book, A Tyranny for, and you slashed out good of its victims, talking about, of course, this ESG movement and those things. And yes. In your introduction, you share a quote, and I just want to read it to the audience. The issue today is the same as it's been throughout all history, whether man shall be allowed to govern himself or be ruled by a small elite. That was Thomas Jefferson, but it's appropriate today as it was then. And we are seeing around the world where there's massive pushback against these elites, but they're not going to let go of power right away.
No, all they're doing is dropping the acronym. They won't call it ESG anymore, but they'll still pursue the same policies. And you can see that BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, if you read their proxy voting guidance, how they're going to vote the shares they hold, they're still promoting, these radical environmental policies, these DEI policies. So they may not use the acronym, but it's socialism in sheep's clothing. They're just kind of backing off what they say publicly.
What do they get out of it? Is it greater control for them? I mean, they have trillions and trillions of dollars on the management. They own everything. If it moves, they'll buy into it, right? Trailer parks, we want a piece of it. Now they're buying into HVAC. I mean, if there's cash flow, they want a piece of the action. Is it to put a moat around their business and no one else is encouraged? I mean, what do they get out of this?
So these are obviously massive, initially passive investment firms, right, which meant they're supposed to invest in companies, let the CEOs run them, and you buy a group of companies like the S&P 500, right, and you expect them to profit. In around 2018, Larry Fink kind of changed that. He said, now we're going to come in and we're going to tell these companies what to do. We're going to tell you what to do on the environment. We're going to tell you what to do on these DEI issues, on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And and you ended up with huge votes against the directors of these various companies by BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, right, for not abiding by the policies they wanted. So it really is a power play. They really are exerting their power, not to implement policies that we normally associate with a democracy. We normally say, well, the people should vote whether or not we have these environmental policies, for example.
Right.
Well, they're saying we don't need that.
Right.
We're going to skip all that. We're just going to tell you what to do.
Before I let you go, and I'm out of time to kind of screaming at me.
Yeah, I still want to talk about tariffs and
Yeah,
this labor
so let's just the labor participation part, because
that's huge.
We have millions of men who are out of this labor force, working age men, and they're not counted. They're not in the U3 number.
Nope.
And when I hear people saying the jobs number is great, I just want to scream. I do normally scream. It can't be great with 8 million people out of the labor force. Why don't we train them up and close the border? It seems like a pretty easy 1-2 punch.
It is an easy 1-2 punch. What people don't understand is if you have a certain number of jobs, let's say you have 1 million jobs, and you've got 1.2 million people in the labor force, then just 200,000 are looking for jobs. If there's fewer people in the labor force, say there's 1,050,000 people in the labor force, then the unemployment rate is very low, but you don't have any more
but you
jobs.
still have 300,000 people who need to eat, shelter, food,
and they're not
walking
they're
around
just
the
not in the
streets,
labor force.
They're discouraged. I mean, they're still the fabric of our nation. Why don't we train them up, and so that we can actually have an orderly border? We want migration. The country's building immigration. We're all proud of that. No one's against that.
Nope.
But why don't we
Legal
help the average
immigration.
American out there? I don't get that part.
Well, you are absolutely right, and I think President Trump was elected to implement that agenda, and I think we're going to see it.
So I hope corporations stop belly aching about it, and the economists, and let's see what happens. I believe it's going to be great, Andy.
Remember, just one more thing real quick. You saw that big surge in concerns about tariffs. Inflation under Trump, what was it? Under 2%, 1.4%? Well, now it's not as high as it was even back then. So let's not panic.
Yeah.
He knows what he's doing. Let's give him a chance to do it.
That's the C-suite and the media and some economists. That ain't the stock market. The stock market's celebrating.
We could talk all day here.
Good, man. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Charles.
much. I appreciate you.
My pleasure.